Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be talking about Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed Shadows. In fact, we're reacting to a video that desu put out. Basically, it seems like they're a little nervous with Assassin's Creed coming up. I know Star Wars Outlaw probably didn't do as well as they wanted. Definitely didn't release to the fanfare that they wanted. Added some pretty major bugs, especially if you paid what, that extra $40 or something? I can't remember the exact number, but you paid an increased amount of money to get that early access, and then you essentially lost all of your early access progress because of bugs. I think Ubisoft is a little nervous. I think a lot of their future probably is dependent based on how well Assassin's Creed Shadow does. Let's see what Rev has to say and we'll go from there.
So the nightmare year for Ubisoft has continued because they got caught running to journalists to blame gamers for the failures of Assassin's Creed Shadows.
I don't know why they're blaming gamers, but I mean, that's original. But what failures? The game hasn't even come out yet. I mean, yeah, they've got caught with, some shady stuff when it came to things that they've done with the game, but I wouldn't say complete failure. The game hasn't come out yet, unless they know the numbers are horrible for like the pre-sales and they know this is going to tank. Maybe they knew that. Maybe that's why they're trying to get ahead of the storm a little bit.
We saw the release of Star Wars Outlaws, which was another flop for Ubisoft, which coincided with another drop in their stock, resulting in a group of their shareholders demanding some serious changes with the company.
57% drop, and their shareholders' demands, they were big. They wanted to flip the table, essentially. They wanted to reset everything, it seemed like. I mean, they were not small or minor demands.
Now, not only are these games causing drops in stock and concerns among shareholders because of the quality of the gameplay, it also is exacerbated by the fact that these developers keep doing interviews where they make contradictory or just outright offensive statements about their potential customers.
And I see this a lot in, especially like Disney Star Wars. They've been doing this a lot. And then you have Disney Marvel, game community managers like it was for Helldivers 2, I believe. Why would you come out and insult your player base or your customer base? Why would you do that? You're pissing people off that might potentially buy your product. And so the more you piss off, you're going to have a smaller number of people that's willing to buy your product. It makes no sense as to why you do that. I just don't understand it.
That's exactly what happened again here. Honestly, if I was someone who was serious at Ubisoft, if I saw one of the developers approaching an interviewer, I would jump on them like the Secret Service to prevent them from saying further things that might damage the reputation.
They need to. A lot of these companies need to have something in these contracts that as far as a social media like policy or something to tell these people to shut up and just stop pissing your customers off. Do not insult the people that you want to buy your game or you want to buy tickets to go see your movie. It makes no sense. It's asinine.
Of Ubisoft and its products. Now, looking forward into 2024, Ubisoft really only has one major bullet left in their chamber, and that's Assassin's Creed Shadows, which releases in November.
I think they have a lot.
Which, once again, I'll remind you that they ensured to shareholders this game would succeed because players would receive it in a very positive way.
I haven't seen a lot of positive stuff on this game. The only ones I have seen seem to be either shills that just eat up anything Ubisoft does, or they're outright doing it because they're trying to push back against some of the negative feedback that's out there on Twitter. But I don't believe I've seen any naturally occurring, talking about like it's a wild animal, naturally occurring positive feedback on this game. In fact, I've seen nothing but negative feedback when it comes to things they release on this game. Whether it be trailers, whether it be gameplay, videos, it's not good. Which is unfortunate because I love Japan, and anything set in Japan, I could gobble up.
Years ago, we saw the world trailer for Assassin's Creed Shadows, and look at that. It's an absolute flop that is heavily disliked by gamers, getting 83,000 dislikes and only 19,000
All of their stuff for this game's been doing that. So I don't know how to interpret this.
Now, what do you do when you get criticism like that? Well, it looks like Ubisoft has chosen the worst possible route by going to the New York Times to attack players in defense of Assassin's Creed
Why are they going
Shadows.
to the New York Times?
They should not be doing any more interviews because they keep making fools out of themselves, and this is just another example of that. Now, before we get into the Assassin's Creed portion of the article, I think that Park Place brings up a really good point of comparison, where basically the tactics of Ubisoft currently are very similar to the tactics done by the executives at Lord of the Rings, The Rings of Power back in 2022. So back then, the executives of the
Rings
show
of Power.
approached Vanity Fair writers, and they attacked Tolkien's fans and said that Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power, was something that they were bashing and hating on simply because of diversity, right? And we know now that this show has been a disaster.
Let's take an IP and make new content about it, but let's change it from what it was, piss the fan base off, because, you know, the modern audience, they'll definitely show up and support us. And let's see how that works out, because it hasn't. It didn't for Star Wars Acolyte. It's not for the Lord of the Rings, Rings of Power, House of the Dragon. That's doing well. I haven't finished season. I think I just finished season 1. I'm into season 2. I haven't finished season 2 yet. I have to pick it back up. I mean, it's okay. It's enjoyable. I have to watch Game of Thrones though, because I haven't watched that yet. So, and I'm told that that's even better. We'll have to see. But yeah, oh my God, this is always their tactic. It's, if you don't like something, racism is always the answer. Let's just cry racism. That's the shield we're going to hide behind.
It has returned for its second season, seeing a 50% decline in viewership from season 1. And as always, you see the games journalists coming out to defend and deflect any criticism directed
Mary
towards
Sue,
the
you can always count on
show.
them.
But back in 2022, that duo at Variety wrote that when Amazon released photos of its multicultural cast, even without character names or plot details, the studio endured a reflexive attack from trolls, the anonymous online kind. Kind of like a page out of the book of a manless stand.
Look, I'm not a Lord of the Rings expert, so I can't go and critique the show other than I don't think it's good. But a lot of the people I've seen critiquing this show online, seriously, they are not anonymous. They're pretty big content creators, so.
With the Acolyte hate, right? Blaming le bigots in the trolls online for the viewership and the criticism that they're receiving. But anyways, they go on to cite a woman named Maria Rios Maldonado, right? Who they described as a Tolkien scholar. That was definitely not an intentional pun they made there. But anyways, however, she is anything but. Rather, she was a PhD student at the University of Glasgow who is interested in ethics, feminist theory, and encountering the other in Tolkien's work.
What?
She also happened to be the equity and diversity offer for the University of Glasgow's Center for Fantasy and the Fantastic.
Oh, Lord.
It all adds up, doesn't it? Now, she would continue and say that basically these fans are racist for simply wanting a lore-accurate adaptation of this franchise, where Maldonado questioned, obviously, there was going to be push and backlash, but the question is, from whom? Who are these people that feel so threatened or disgusted by the idea that an elf is black or Latino or Asian? Now, we've seen examples.
Well, the problem is, from what I've heard, they didn't exist. So now that they've put them in to the lore through the show, when you go and watch Lord of the Rings, the movies now, all the black people are gone. So what happened to them? Was there a genocide? Did they all disappear? Were they all killed off? What happened to them? I mean, it's things like that that raises questions. Those are some of the things I've heard from people critiquing some of this. A little over the top, maybe. But I, for one, can tell you, if there's an IP that I love, like Stargate SG-1, if someone were to pick that up and make a new TV show about it, and they don't honor the lore, or they change things, or they put diversity in there for the sake of diversity, I would be pissed, because I want them to honor what it was. Star Wars had the same problem with when they came out and bought Star Wars and created the new sequel trilogy. Instead of honoring the original trilogy and the original characters, they couldn't wait to get past those guys fast enough, so they killed them off just like this. And they ruined it, because the story they told was horrible, because they didn't want to make the fan base happy. They wanted their whole forces female thing. That was Kathleen Kennedy's thing. I mean, you saw the t-shirts when they first started releasing the first movie. It's ridiculous. They could have done all that if they'd have just set it up properly and told a good story, honored the original trio, so Han Solo, Luke Skywalker, and Princess Leia. If they'd have done that properly, I think a lot of people would not have had an issue with Rey being the main character in the next set of movies. But they didn't do that. Not to mention how they kind of screwed over Finn. I mean, talk about diversity there, right?
Examples of this very recently, actually, with the Lord of the Rings product Tales of the Shire that recently had a showcase here, showing some diversity among the hobbits. You can see that's how it turned out.
I wouldn't play this game anyway, so.
Very hard right now on social media. But now we can go back to Assassin's Creed Shadows and compare what happened in 2022 with Rings of Power versus this. So again, we're going to see people at Ubisoft approach journalists and then try to cite a fraudster expert and then try to deflect all criticism onto bigotry. So here we go. They end up teaming up with New York Times and one of the writers there. And similar to what happened back then, they quote this: "Some gamers erupted over his appearance," referring to Yasuke, "convinced that the franchise, known for its immersive recreations of the past, had gone woke by including a black character in its depiction of 16th century Japan."
The term woke is so overdone by both sides, but you make a game in Japan, and what you end up doing is you find the one lone black guy in Japan to be your main protagonist. You find that one needle in a haystack. Can you not see why people would be complaining? We know why you created two characters. You wanted to use the second one as a shield. I just don't understand why you would do this. There are so many other great samurai characters. Just make up your own, like you've done in all these other games, and have the real life characters that you want to portray in the game be like NPCs. You had that in all these other games. So you had, like in Assassin's Creed Black Flag, you had Blackbeard and many other real life pirates in the game, but they were NPCs that were there to help tell the story, but they weren't the character you played as. That's all they had to do. But the fact that they felt like they had to take the one black guy, then they had to lie about his background, because his background is very much contested. And that's a whole nother video to get into. I don't know how much Rev will talk on it here, but I mean, they had to lie and say he was some legendary samurai when in reality, he most likely was not a samurai, and nobody's even heard of him after Oda Nobunaga essentially died. The guy just up and disappeared. I don't think there was a lot there, and they just wanted to push it. And I think it was the wrong choice, done for the wrong reasons.
He then claims that developers received personal attacks and death threats during an online harassment campaign to no.
And that's what they do. You get these one or two idiots that probably made these attacks. I'm not gonna lie, there's idiots out there. They'll make these attacks, but they'll take that and use it to blanket the entire fan base that's criticizing you as the same craziness as these couple of people. And I don't like that. I think it's dumb. I think you're just dismissing a bunch of people, and I think it's going to hurt you in the long run if you continue to do that.
No surprise, he shares no evidence of such attacks or threats.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that just comes with the territory, unfortunately. I mean, anyone covering Assassin's Creed Shadows and criticizing it for some of its decisions also get that kind of vitriol from people online, but no one really cares what happens to YouTubers and people like that who are criticizing the show because they're doing wrongthink. But anyways, they have this whole thing about going woke because they included a black character in this feudal Japan setting. And that is a complete misrepresentation of what people are trying to say.
Did you see the one gameplay video they showed of combat that had Yasuke going into combat? Did you hear the music they included there? It was like some sort of rap slash Japanese, ancient Japanese mix of music. And I thought it was racist. Because there's a black guy on the screen. On the screen, you got to have some sort of hip hop slash rap music when he's going into combat. I mean, why? Is that because he's black? I mean, why couldn't you just stick to some sort of stereotypical music for that time? I don't understand why you got to make it like rap, hip hop. I don't understand. I mean, that in and of itself felt very racist and stereotypish to me. But that's just me.
There is a reason that they chose Yasuke. It's not because he was the best potential
because he was black.
Protagonist.
We all know
because they wanted a diversity representation as the main character, okay?
Because let's all face it, when it comes down to the nuts and bolts of diversity, Asian people are just white adjacent. They're not really POCs. They're only POCs when it's convenient for them. But any other time, these people think Asians are just white people. Because they're privileged, because they're smart, because they do well in school, they get high grades, they get good jobs, they get high paying jobs. And so there's privilege there. And so to them, they're white adjacent. They are only useful as POCs when it benefits them. In this case, it doesn't. Someone wanted to put a black guy in there for checkbox reasons, and now they have all this backlash, and you see how they're handling it. The fact that they treat Asians like this, I think, is in and of itself racist.
They could have made Yasuke a offshoot character, a side story, something like that, and I think people really would have enjoyed it.
Exactly.
But they clearly took him and propped him front and center because they thought it would be very good for their diversity and inclusivity.
They did the exact opposite of what Disney did to Finn on the Star Wars poster in China, didn't they?
I think it's very obvious what they were going for here with this setting and this choice of character, and in the process having to literally rewrite Japanese history to make it happen. Right, that's the most offensive part.
Yeah, some Japanese people are really pissed about that.
Bigotry and all these terrible things, but in the same breath, they are literally rewriting Japanese history in the name of diversity and progression, and it's really ridiculous. And they call you a bigot.
I don't know how much that really matters.
Virtue signaling campaigns, but anyway,
because while there's a lot of historical accuracy in their games, the story in of itself is not meant to be historically accurate. Like Edward Kenway, I believe his name was, in Black Flag. Well, he didn't exist, and he went on and found all these like Adam and Eve type alien artifacts or whatever. I mean, yeah, those didn't really exist during pirate days down in Nassau and the Bahamas. But I get where he's coming from. But I don't think the story in of itself has to be historically accurate.
The big heart of the issue here is the characterization of Yasuke in the game, and the problem with Ubisoft is that they can't settle their minds on how
the game faithfully depicts real historical figures. Yes and no. Maybe it does with Oda Nobunaga, but it does not with Yasuke.
They want to approach this character and other historical characters in this game, beginning months ago by saying they wanted to faithfully depict real historical figures. And this was something that was backed up by Ubisoft and also games journalists who said Yasuke is a samurai, not a retainer, as history has always suggested up until this point. He's a samurai.
They were pushing this out big time.
If you have an issue with that, there's clearly something wrong with you. You're a bigot, what have you. But then we continue on in the article where another individual was cited as the source and the proof that Yasuke is a samurai. So after attacking the gamers, Small then went into weaving a false narrative that has already been refuted for months by citing historian Yu Hirayama, who is an admitted communist. Small cites Hirayama's claim that it is without question that Yasuke was a samurai. There are very few historical documents on him, but there's no doubt he was a samurai.
How do you make that statement? You're a historian. How do you make that statement? There's very few historical documents about him, but there's no doubt he was a samurai. Look, if he was truly a samurai, being black like he was during his time frame, I would expect to see a lot of mentioning of him, a lot of references of him, but there's not. There's hardly any. In fact, most of what you know today was made up by that white guy who wrote that book about him. I can't remember his name, Thomas something or whatever. So, I mean, I don't know how you can make that statement. Being a historian, you're making a statement of fact when you don't have anything to back it up.
Who served Nobunaga, as Hirayama claims. Now, before we get into Hirayama, just remember the many different revolving doors of supposed historians who tried to claim that Yasuke was a samurai, beginning with, of course, Thomas Lockley. We've talked about him in depth before, but to very quickly state what he did, he made a 400-page slop book making baseless claims that Yasuke was a samurai, and in his own time, slowly over the course of years,
he got caught with
the Wikipedia page of Yasuke, which always referred to him as a retainer, and slowly removed sources claiming as such that he was a retainer, and then slowly started inserting his own book as a source, claiming he was a samurai, eventually leading until a few months ago where he was changed from a retainer to a samurai on the Wikipedia page.
Oh, that only happened because of this game.
His own book. And that was exposed, and a lot of people in Japan are very offended by some of the things in this book. And eventually people had to move on.
As often as fights happen over the accuracy and editing of Wikipedia, you can't use that as a source anymore. Teachers would always get on to you in school when you try to use that as a source. But nowadays, people write articles and use it as a source. You can't use something as a source when it's so easily manipulated. You just can't. You can't trust it.
To a new expert, which was this guy.
Oh, I've seen him on YouTube.
Whoever this guy is, right? So he comes out and says Yasuke's a samurai, and people on Twitter went crazy with this clip. There was tweets with tens of thousands of likes, people wagging their fingers in the faces of people who were critics of the samurai claim, saying, "You're wrong. This historian, this expert has come forward and proved you wrong."
Okay.
Well, it turns out, according to this Japanese YouTuber and many others, that this is just a guy who works at a Japanese restaurant. This is just a guy who's a YouTuber. He's not a historian. He's just a Japanese man wearing a kimono, and people used him as an expert. They assumed he must be an expert on Japanese history, which is very offensive, by the way. It's like seeing a dude named Billy Bob wearing a cowboy.
Hey, I'm a white guy from the South. I'm an expert on anything Southern, right? Just so you know. You want to know something about Southern people? Just ask me. I know all there is to know.
Boy hat and in a pickup truck and being like, yep, he must be an expert on some of the past of America, the American history. It's just such a stupid thing.
You got a cowboy hat and a pickup truck, you know everything about the history of the United States. Because you know what? You're an expert. Cowboy hat and pickup truck makes you an expert. Now I got the pickup. I don't have a cowboy hat. I've just never been big on them. Sorry. Love the boots though. Don't wear them. But I love him.
So that was debunked. And then we get to Hirayama. He was the next one in the revolving door here. And he would make his statements, like I said. And this would be used by people, again, to weaponize hatred towards anyone questioning the samurai status of Yasuke. And again,
you couldn't even question this. You question this at all, hell would come your way from these people on Twitter. You'd be labeled a racist and all these other sort of, insults. It was crazy.
As it was pointed out in the article, his claims are that there's not enough history or historical evidence to suggest that he's not a samurai, basically. Like, they're saying that the absence of proof is the proof of the claim. Like, it's so ridiculous.
Yeah. We have nothing that says he wasn't, therefore, he must have been.
But going forward, this would be questioned as well, beginning with the fact that he is a member of the Japanese Communist Party. And if you're like me, I hear that and already dismiss his claims. But if that's not enough for you...
Yeah, we know communists are bad, but I don't know how that relates to his claim. But we can all agree, communists bad. Got it.
Understand why that's relevant. Because Hirayama subscribes to the Marxist historiography theory that basically does not require empirical evidence to make claims about history. Meaning, you can just say whatever you want pretty much, if it just feels right. So that's how he's determining that Yasuke is a samurai.
That never flies with my wife. Therefore, it should not fly with history. Just saying. I mean, I can try it again, but I know she's not gonna go for it. But like, come on, dear. It just feels right. Let's do it. Let's do it for our country. Yeah. That's not gonna work.
Saying, yeah, there's no real evidence to suggest it, but it just makes sense to me. So believe me. Obviously, this was trashed on once people realized this claim was completely baseless and based on a really crazy Marxist historiography theory that is just trash. But moving forward in the article, we have some other historians who do say that Yasuke was more likely a retainer and someone that was an entertainer as well for Nobunaga. And they even go on to say that even if it was proven that Yasuke was a samurai, it was much more of a formality that often was given to favorite entertainers and other companions of these people, including sumo wrestlers. Like, obviously it wasn't expected that they were going to go out and fight in wars, but it was given as sort of a
title.
Aesthetic. And they were given a sword
and
and
honorary
else.
title.
It was more of a vanity-related thing. So those are very damning claims against the claims that Yasuke was a samurai. But continuing on, not only did Small cite the communist Hirayama, but like Vanity Fair with Maldonado, he cited Kazuma Hashimoto, who he described as a Japanese consultant and translator in the video game industry. Hashimoto told Small, it was people in the West who were upset with seeing Yasuke as a samurai. Now, that is a pretty ridiculous claim because it's...
Well, no, that may be true because we see what's going on. We know why he was put in there, and we wanted to call it out because that stuff has been going on for a while now, and people are starting to get fed up with it. All these check boxes and DEI crap. Look, tell a good story, make a good game, stop with the check boxes. People get tired of it. They're going to start calling it out.
Not just people in the West who have an issue with this claim. It's actually a lot more heated among Japanese gamers to the point where it got the attention of the Japanese government.
Yeah, I saw that.
And look at some of the trailers on the Japanese side of YouTube. This was some of the early teasers. Look at the like-dislike ratio. It's even more crooked and negative than the ones
Granted,
in the
we
West.
don't know.
And again, people will defend this
people
by
are
saying,
going
it's
over
just a
there
bunch of
and
trolls from the West
downvoting it.
creating
We're
accounts just to
assuming
dislike it, which is such a baseless
legit Japanese
really
people downvoting this
on their behalf. But look at the trailer release from a few days ago. Okay?
Yeah.
Again, the like-dislike ratio is even more brutal. So it's continued all throughout these months leading up to the release of this, and it's not getting any better. But we continue on in the articles where it says, this is patently false and makes absolutely no sense given Small even admits that Ubisoft apologized to Japanese players Small wrote after the online blowback.
The fact that they put out that whole apology statement, it was saying we're sorry without actually saying we're sorry, but the fact that they put that out means people were really over the target with this. And they knew it. Ubisoft knew it. And I think they were trying to do some sort of damage control because everything that they had happen here with Yasuke and then like using some fake props, and it ended up being like One Piece Zoro swords that they were trying to pass off as being Yasuke samurai swords or something like that. I think a lot of people in Ubisoft were fearful that they had done some serious damage to their game before it even came out. And I think that apology was them trying to do damage control.
The game's development team attempted to assuage the concerns about the game's authenticity, apologizing in a lengthy statement for promotional materials that it said had bothered some Japanese audiences. In fact, he even noted that a political party in Japan formally asked the government to comment on what it considers historical inaccuracies. And yes, they did make an apology post, where ironically, they flipped their entire view of how history will play into their own games, now changing their perspective from being historically accurate to now saying that we try to respect Japanese culture, but we'll make our own creative decisions. Where then a month after that in this post right here, they would flip-flop once again to their main position. And then a few days ago, they flip-flopped again.
Yeah, they flip-flopped on the whole accuracy thing several times.
Accurate. It's mind-blowing. It's a complete mess. And yeah, that's Assassin's Creed Shadows, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Hail Mary for Ubisoft. This is their last chance to make up for the countless flops and the hundreds of millions of dollars they've lost on other projects. And this is their savior. Assassin's Creed Shadows, that's looking like it's going to be one of the biggest bombs of 2024, but that's not too surprising given the context surrounding this game. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. Hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time.
Good video. I'll put the video down in the description. I will say, I don't know if it'll be a flop. Assassin's Creed has a pretty big fan base. My 12-year-old kid wants to play it. Unfortunately, I'm not going to drag him into all this crap. Say no, and here's why. I'll probably let him play it. I'll probably buy it for him, and that way he can enjoy his life, right? But I don't know if it'll flop. I think it probably has been hurt and probably won't sell as many copies as they had hoped. There's a lot of people out there that probably don't even follow this stuff that would love to play Assassin's Creed again. So we'll see. I will say that as time goes on, both in politics and the culture war, people are getting more and more activated. So those normies in the middle that don't pay attention to any of this stuff, that number is probably slowly getting smaller and smaller. So maybe they've hurt this game more than I think they have, but we'll see. So that's the video, guys. Hit like. If you liked the video, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Don't forget to check Rev out. Great content creator. He's got a good channel going. And yeah, I'll talk to you guys next time. Peace.